If you follow the channel from the start, you'll know I've stated clearly that in my view, it doesn't matter if a woman identifies as a feminist, as a modern Western woman, she'll demand feminist rights. Let's define this directly. What are today's two biggest feminist rights? They are the family courts. And Maria da Peña, these rights, they grant women the ability to hold men in their hands and act as they wish. Anyone with knowledge on this subject understands that the family court and Maria da Peña are two entities that are completely against men. They heavily discriminate by giving women absolute power in marriage within the relationship. Women have the freedom to do as they please with the couple's property and children. She has the ability to do anything she desires with the man. It's an absurdly destructive tool, backed by a massive apparatus and the immense power of the state behind it. Anyone who follows Dom Santos' channel can already see the videos he has made, which, by the way, are incredibly good, especially those about the family court and Maria da Peña. But anyway, just to remind you, it really doesn't matter what label a woman carries, whether she identifies as right-wing or left. Wing claims she's a feminist or insists she's not, whether she's conservative or not, and everything else in between. The truth is, every modern Western woman will inevitably demand feminist rights. Then comes the question, do we negotiate for them to give up these rights or not? Do we just remove their rights? If we don't remove Muslim immigrants, will Islam take them away anyway? We've talked about this often. And third fleeing monkey, TFM, shares an interesting story he's told many times on his channel. You might even encounter a woman who identifies as right-wing, conservative, or traditionalist. And you think, okay, you'll have a traditional relationship with her. You're going to be the one working, providing for the household, supporting her, and taking care of the children. Meanwhile, she'll take care of the home, keep it tidy, look after the kids, prepare meals for you, and handle everything else. Everything will seem perfect. Everything will appear beautiful. That is until the moment arrives when you have your first major disagreement, your first significant argument. Or maybe she wants to do something and you tell her no. Or even worse, she's found cheating on you or involved in paternity fraud. The instant any of these situations occur, or if she just decides she no longer wants to be in a relationship with you, she'll truly end up destroying the marriage. Then you will find out who truly holds the power in this relationship and the impact that these two rights, which are completely unfair and entirely against men, have on the institution of marriage and parenthood. This is what the TFM discusses. These tools and how they empower them, they will not relinquish these rights, regardless of the labels they choose to use or avoid. And even Don Sandro, in his videos, he's made it very clear that the woman of today is not the woman of the 1950s. She'll be nice and everything as long as she wants to be. Once she decides she doesn't want to anymore, she won't relinquish these rights. She's not going to surrender these additional rights of feminist privilege. He's emphasized that very clearly. Additionally, there is another significant issue, which is raised not only by Don Sandro, also by both Don Sandro and Third Flinging Monkey, and I believe even the author of the book, Men on Strike, Dr. Helen. I recall watching a video quite some time ago. It was a video by Don Sandro that mentioned this topic, women and their feelings towards men. Did women ever truly like men, or have they always viewed them as mere tools? Third Flinging Monkey has already talked about this subject. I've also watched a video by Dr. Helen on the matter. It appears that a significant portion of today's women, and this portion is growing, genuinely do not like men. They have no trust in men. So you might wonder, okay, is this a modern issue among women, or has it been this way forever? Over the years, has the number of women who feel this way increased or decreased? Then I recalled another video I created for Mame Fale. I think it was some title like this about the immorality of the left. The left is immoral. You don't have to argue with it, which is a video that Arthur from Mame Fale, he keeps going to these public universities, federal and state, in the humanities and social sciences departments, and he keeps arguing with the feminist women there. And you observe that these women are incredibly toxic, so deeply damaged that there is absolutely no way to fix it, no way to reverse the situation. When I created that video, I came to the realization that, wow, it appears we have a significant portion of the female population, and this portion is expanding, who are unsuitable as companions, unfit to be wives, and not capable of being mothers. This is because they are entirely toxic, severely damaged, and they harbor a strong dislike for men, coupled with a profound distrust towards them. However, when I initially made this observation, my attention was solely on those women who are openly left-wing, such as socialists, communists, and feminists, particularly those found within the humanities and social science departments, They often wear Che Guevara t-shirts, feminist wristbands, and various symbols, among other things, etc. But the real question is, are these the only women who are openly feminists, who are avowedly left-wing, and who are considered spoiled? This week I created 2 videos. The first one focused on the significance of the female vote, exploring the true impact and importance of women voting. Later, a woman commented on this topic and I captured screenshots of her remarks. I immediately decided to make a second video about these interactions, which became the second installment of my unfortunate comments series. And it seems that afterwards she deleted her comments or deleted her YouTube. I didn't look it up. But anyway, when a person appears on the channel and doesn't simply offend, but wants to talk, wants to debate, I let it go. Because it's a truly fascinating experience, not only for me, but also for everyone else on the channel. So anyway, this woman, she began her speech, her argument, by stating that she wasn't a feminist and neither was she a misandrist. However, she expressed fear of Islam and fear of Muslims, and mentioned she was ready to sacrifice some benefits, but she was definitely not prepared to give up her rights. Of course, what I mentioned there was about Maria da Peña and the family courts. Now, consider the narcissism involved, the sense of entitlement that comes with it. She's acknowledging her need for men, that men are her defenders because the opposition is approaching. Like Islam and Muslims, she desires Western men to protect her. Yet, she's not ready to relinquish her rights. She's not prepared to engage in any negotiations, make any compromises, or offer any sacrifices. Why should the man even consider accepting this offer? Seriously, where does this notion come from that the man is just a servant without any self-interest, willing to make a deal for nothing in return? That's absurd, honestly. So I debated with her, saying, look, if you want the protection and support of Western men, then you're going to need to be willing to submit to them. If he's going to take responsibility for you, you must grant him authority. Her response was merely that it was completely unacceptable and that it was utterly absurd. And do remember, she mentioned that she wasn't a feminist, nor was she a misandrist. She understood that the man, being responsible for the woman, must have authority over the woman, over the family, and over the children. She has to submit to him, and in other words, she needs to get a husband. She desires a Western man to become her husband, one who will not only defend her interests, but also take responsibility for her well-being, ensuring her protection and provision. However, she is unwilling to relinquish any of her rights. There might be some additional benefits she hasn't mentioned. Essentially, she expects the man to handle everything without compensation. So, here's the situation, right? I explained it very clearly. You need to make a firm commitment. However, she mentioned that she did not identify as a feminist, nor did she consider herself a misandrist. Yet, she interpreted all of this to imply that a man ought to possess the right to physically abuse his wife, and he ought to have the right to sexually assault his wife. Something that did not even exist in reality in the 19th century. Because recall that in the 19th century, marriage was primarily a religious and family institution. The government had not yet become fully involved. However, even families and religious institutions managed these matters. There were already some protections for women. But that isn't the main point. The main point is that she said she's neither a feminist nor a misandrist, and understood that submitting to a man, giving him authority over her, makes her a slave. Essentially, she repeated the same feminist statement, suggesting that every man is inherently violent and every man is an impotent rapist. Without these two feminist rights, like the family court and Maria da Peña, and without the state's power backing her, she believes every man would inevitably resort to rape and violation. Essentially, she believes that without these rights and without the protection of the state, there might come a day when the man returns home and remarks, "Oh honey, this meal is terrible," and questions when you will finally learn to cook correctly, and then you hit her in the face, and she ends up going to sleep with a bruised eye. She believes that the following day he'll return home and say, "Oh, we're going to have sex, whether you want it or not. So just stay silent and let it happen." That's what she thinks. She's going to be assaulted. It makes her think that's the reality. This situation reminds me of what I mentioned about those left-wing women who openly identify as feminists, who have a dislike for men and don't trust them. If you dislike someone, it's hard to trust them. Now, this woman claims she's not a feminist, nor is she a misandrist. Perhaps she's center-right, maybe a traditionalist or a conservative, yet she doesn't want to relinquish similar rights and is using the same kind of discourse. This is truly the peak of absurdity, because she doesn't want to engage with men as equals, simply because she has a dislike for men and lacks trust in them. She's just as messed up as the socialist feminist crowd. However, in this case, she desires a relationship with the man, but with these additional rights that unfairly discriminate against him. She wants the power, backed by the state, to do whatever she wishes to him if he makes a mistake in her view. She seeks complete rights to half of his assets, full rights to the house and full rights to the children. She wants the ability to turn him into a financial slave for 2 whole decades. What I mean is, she doesn't like or trust the man, yet she expects him to like and trust her. This is even though she finds herself in a situation that's entirely unfair, with 2 women's rights in practice within our system that are completely against him. Additionally, he doesn't have the support or force of the state on his side. So let's explain it like this. First thing I'm going to explain, there are people here who appear on the channel saying that MGTOW people, if a conservative traditionalist woman appears, they'll be drooling and want to get married and have children. No way in hell, okay? You're mixing us up with either the realists or those Templar folks over there who are followers of Nando Mora and Olavo de Carvalho. The vast majority of people on this channel are MGTOWs who have completely abandoned the idea of marriage and having children. There are a few who are still hesitant. But regardless of the woman's quality or the label or the so-called brand of the woman, as long as family courts and Maria da Peña exist, these guys are not going to get married. They are not planning to have any children at all. They're mixing us up with other groups. But the truth is, most people on this channel aren't part of that group. They're individuals who have totally given up on the concept of marriage and fatherhood. There's a surprising number of men who have had vasectomies, more than women might actually realize. However, the main point of this video is to highlight that the increase in women who are spoiled and who don't like or trust men isn't just limited to those who openly identify as socialists and feminists. It's a broader trend we're observing. A part of other groups of women, so the proportion is actually larger than we initially thought, and it continues to grow. Now, let's make it clear and explain what this whole business is about, where the woman has to submit to the man. The man is supposed to be responsible for the family, the woman, and the children, and he will have authority over them. Here's the thing, the man will come to the woman and say, "Oh dear, I'm going to support you, and I'm going to pay all the household bills. And if you want, you won't have to work for the rest of your life. The only thing I truly expect is this, that you take care of my home, that you take care of our children, that you don't abandon me, and that you remain faithful to me. That's it." The other thing that's implied naturally is that while the couple are still young, they're into it, having sex twice a week, then maybe once a week, and as they get older, they can have sex every 15 days, and that's it. The woman considers this completely unacceptable and views it as utterly absurd. She is not prepared to relinquish her rights at all. Despite the presence of the family court and the protections of Maria da Peña, she remains steadfast, even with Islam and Muslims approaching her doorstep. Because she isn't worried about Western society at all. Her only concern is focused on her own well-being and personal interests. But she's not open to negotiating or giving up anything. Also, regarding the proposal of the man having authority over the woman, as a man, if a woman supported you and asked you not to cheat, to treat her well and care for your kids, would any person actually say no to that? Honestly, a man would say no. It's only in the mind of the modern Western woman that, this is oppression. It's like real truth. Other guys have already appeared on the channel talking about it several times. The modern Western woman, she thinks it's wonderful to submit and be subject to the authority of a company or a boss. A company, a boss who doesn't give a damn about her. The moment she's no longer useful, she'll be fired, and that'll be that. If she falls ill or becomes disabled, the company simply doesn't care. If you retire and find yourself unable to live a decent life in your old age, the company still doesn't care. The government behaves in the same way. They think it's beautiful for a woman to submit to a company or boss and give them authority. But if she submits to a loving husband who cares for her, even in old age or sickness, it's seen as oppression. Man, that's just absurd. Then the whole issue surrounding women's rights, right? Our family court, Maria da Peña, whether women are going to give in to this or not, whether we're going to have to take these rights away from them. But the issue is even more fundamental, It's that thing, do women ever genuinely like men? Do they actually like men? And so When MGTOW's here, and most of us have already given up on the idea of getting married and having children, but just imagine if you were a reluctant MGTOW. Picture yourself as a realist. Envision yourself as a conservative, a traditionalist, or even a feminist, and you still desire to get married and have children. Now, confronted with the realization that a significant portion of women, regardless of whether they're identified as feminists or not, whether they're right-wing or left-wing, actually don't like men, don't trust men, and aren't willing to abandon a system that is unfair to men to relinquish these rights, how would that possibly make you want to get married and have a child? Honestly, if that desire doesn't disappear after that, you should really head to the ICU, man. It goes to the ICU and, it's not stable at all. It's on the verge of dying soon. So here's the realization. The label really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all if you're left or right, or whether you're a feminist or not. They're in a crisis situation. They're truly afraid of the Muslims, the Islamists, yet they don't want to give anything up. And we realize that it goes beyond that. Regardless of the label and so on, they don't want to give up their rights. They don't trust men. Like I said, they're toxic. They're damaged. There's no fixing it. There's no going back. They're no good at being a partner. They're no good at being a wife. They're no good at being a mother. Imagine a woman like that being a single mother raising a man. And then there's another guy from the manosphere, Aaron Clary, who I believe is the most pragmatic individual. He, along with Raging Gold Eagle, represents a practical perspective. Aaron Clary is already in his 40s. He underwent the osteotomy when he was around 30 years old. He's been with his girlfriend for about 10 years now. Yet he hasn't married, nor has he had a child. They live separately, each in their own house. And he mentions this, that it appears that only about 1 in 100 women excel at being good partners. He didn't mention a wife or a mother, since he's not married and doesn't have any children. Therefore, perhaps, based on what we've observed in this video I'm creating, there is a significant and increasing number of women who harbor dislike or distrust towards men. This appears to be an expanding group, no matter the label they identify with, whether it's left, right, feminist, or otherwise. How close is that to reality? It's almost like a black pill idea, something Turtling Monkey has mentioned. He says women don't really like men. They see them as tools. If a guy makes her life easier, she likes him. Once he doesn't, he's out. Basically, women don't like men. She doesn't trust the man. So this is a fundamental issue, and I believe that this video will provide us with a great deal to ponder. However, the most crucial aspect is recognizing that even in a crisis situation, with the arrival of Muslims and Islamists here, women aren't worried about Western civilization. They don't give a damn. They're worried about their own well-being. Even in this crisis situation, she's not willing to negotiate. There won't be a negotiating table. She doesn't want to give up any rights. She doesn't like men, and she doesn't trust them either. Therefore, it seems like there's no point, man. It appears that either Western men will need to forcibly remove these rights from women, or the migrants will eventually come and take these rights away for the Western men. And it's not the men who suffer most, it's the women. Consider this. Women have misused their societal power to make Western men second-class citizens in the very society they build, defend, and uphold. Yet, they can't even offer anything in return for our protection. So, to be honest, man, if Muslims and Islamists keep expanding their presence in Western civilization, then Western men are going to have to convert eventually. Women will end up losing their rights regardless of whether it's us or the Muslims taking them away. And then you might think, well, no, but if the Western man converts, he will end up being a second-class male citizen, because only those of original pure ethnicity can be truly Islamic. However, you'll still remain a second-class citizen, only positioned above women. Now, what exactly does the Western man stand to lose in this situation? On one side, there are Western women desiring that Western men persist in protecting and providing for them, yet offering nothing in return. Men are left without any authority, bearing only the burden of responsibility and the potential for risk. And then there's a Muslim who comes along and says, listen, we're arriving and we're planning to take away the rights of women. And, if you're interested, you can join the party. Deciding which side to choose is very hard. The most significant aspect, whether it's the worst or best part, is that we've now removed the question of their willingness to negotiate. There's no longer any uncertainty about whether we'll need to strip away their rights by force. It's likely we'll have to do it forcefully. This involves the rights of the family court, the rights of Maria da Peña, and everything else to restore a true family structure where the man holds responsibility and authority over the family. And the fact is, we are increasingly seeing that many women in general have a tendency not to like men. There is a significant and expanding group of women, irrespective of any label, who tend not to like men, and they don't trust men either. Honestly, I have to say I don't feel sorry for them at all, not even a little bit. That's it. I didn't anticipate this video. This week's experience was intriguing and should give us much to ponder.